Good evening, everyone. I'd like to introduce Rachel Storm. She is a curator for History Colorado in Denver. She's got her bachelor's degree from Iowa State. She got her master's from Iowa State. And then she got her PhD at the University of Delaware. So I'm glad that she's here. I'm very pleased. I'm excited to see what she has to talk about in Rocky Ford. And I'm really surprised that she's even agreed to. So let's give her a welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me, by the way. Whenever I am invited to talk about history, it's very hard for me to say no. But it's even harder for me to say no because I actually did my PhD in agricultural history. And so coming to Rocky Ford is just very exciting for me with the deep history of agriculture here. I am not going to talk to you about the history of Rocky Ford, primarily because I'm guaranteeing that almost all of you know more about it than I do. So what I thought I would do tonight is I would bring some things from History Colorado, which is the State History Museum up in Denver, that are marked as Rocky Ford in our catalog. And I thought I'd talk to you a little bit about why History Colorado may have decided to bring each of these things into the collection. Because we don't say yes to everything, we can't. We have to bring in materials from all over the state, not just from here. Although I have to say, you guys have a great museum. This is my second time here now, and I love it. Every time I'm here, I see something new that I get excited about. So I love getting to come down here. And if you invite me again, I will show back up again. But today we're going to talk about some of the things. You're welcome to come up and take a look at these afterwards. I can't leave them here, but I will stay as late as you all want to take a look at these things. So what I brought, and I'll grab these and I'll bring them back to the podium for talking. This one, which Rob was like, oh yeah, I have that one. And it's the original, not the reprint. But I brought this reprint. It's called Rocky Ford as the School Children See It. And it was printed in 1925 by the school district, so by the Otero County School District, and it says, dedicated, we the children of School District Number 4, Otero County, Colorado, dedicate this book to those sturdy pioneers who gave us the city of Rocky Ford, and to those progressive citizens of the present who are carrying on this work. These are field trip reports. The kids went to beet farms, they went to chicken hatcheries, they went to a laundry service. And it says what each of them submitted a little report via their teacher. So we have the Valley Laundries Company, and it was third grade students that were sent to this industrial laundry, which we would never do with 8-year-olds now. But back then you could send 8-year-olds to an industrial laundry. And they wrote, in this book, it's 4 pages long, where they talk about the process that they saw, they talk about facts that the third graders probably didn't walk away with these facts. For example, the soiled clothes are first taken to the receiving room. Here they are marked, each single piece, even to the handkerchiefs and hose. The water for the work is kept in big tanks over the roof. There is storage for 20,000 gallons of water. There's a lot of numbers in these reports. A report from another group of students who went to the canning factory. These were 4th graders. Listed out the Libby McNeil Libby Company. Libby, of course, still produces tomato products. And it's acreage contracted 200, matured 175. Yield per acre 1922, from 5 tons to 15 tons, average 10 tons, and so on. There's like a whole page of statistical numbers. The 4th graders were probably not providing that information. That was probably being provided by the canning company, by Libby. So I love this book. And the reason I love this book, and I don't even have to leave my copy because Rob has an original copy. Like I said, mine's a reprint. I love this book for a bunch of reasons. First of all, these 3rd graders got to go to some, and 3rd and 4th graders got to go to some really cool field trips. I'm just saying, like, back when you can go anywhere, they went on some cool field trips. But I also love this for another reason. I am the business and industry curator. And so the reason I love this is because the state senators and state representatives that represented Otero County and Rocky Ford could have taken this book, printed by their school district in 1925, with them when they went to the Capitol to do their Capitol business, when they went for their legislative sessions. And they take the book, they go to their legislative session, and they're like, look at how much cool business we are doing in Rocky Ford. Right here, right? They can prove the economic worth of Rocky Ford, told by third and fourth graders who are awfully cute. They can go and tell that story at the state legislature while they're trying to get new bills put before the floor of the Senate, while they're trying to get new legislation passed to increase economic wealth coming to this county. Unlike other regions, agricultural regions still remained relatively depressed in the 1920s. Agriculture had a big boom for World War I, but prices dropped following World War I. And while the rest of the country was celebrating the Jazz Age and all the F. Scott Fitzgerald stuff, people who lived in agricultural areas tended to be more depressed economically, maybe emotionally as well, but economically a decade ahead of the rest of the Great Depression. So they are trying to show the economic worth of this county, of Rocky Ford, to bring people here. Come do business here in Rocky Ford, right? We've got a great set of businesses already. Come and join them. So I love this book. I think this tells a really cool story doing that. What else do we have? Let's jump back 20 years earlier. I'm going to delicately pick up one of these. You may notice that when I handle these things, I'm not using gloves. We do not use gloves with paper because gloves are really important for non-paper things, but we do not use them with paper, just clean hands. This paper, I have 3 copies of this. We keep it in a specially made folio because this page actually already has a tear on it. So it's actually torn, all 3 copies are torn in the same place. It may have been that whoever had them just had them folded for long enough that they ended up with a tear. So I don't want to add to that, and using gloves, I can't feel the paper as well with my hands. So I'm just going to use my hands to gently open this so that I don't do further damage to it. This one I love because I opened this one, I already had one open over here. The American Beet Sugar Company. They have stockholders. They need to let their stockholders know how they did in 1904. So they print a board report. Goes to the board of directors and then goes out to the stakeholders. Dear Sir, during the past 5 years, the development and growth of the Arkansas Valley has been enormous. The U and the S are missing, so it just says enormo, which I kind of like. Has been enormo. We'll go with that. But great as it has been, there is still room for greater development. We know of no location where a farmer can settle and make money faster, enjoy at the same time all the advantages of civilization. And then it goes over results from previous years to 1904. So it looks like a board report. It talks about the climate, talks about the crop, beets are the best. Well, we all know that, right? But what I really love about this is it tells which individual farmers or growers did the best. So the one I have folded open, which you'll be able to see when you come up, is that it's actually an individual list of growers. It has their name, has their town, most of them are Rocky Ford, and then it gives 3 statistics. The gross amount of money they made, the average amount that they made per acre by dollar, and then the average tonnage per acre. Now, my grandpa farmed corn and soybeans because I'm from Iowa. My grandpa would have loved this because you sit down, you read the report, first of all you see where you are on the list, right? Like, where are you on the list? Then you look at the people who did better than you. What kind of fertilizer were they using? What varietal of beet were they sowing? How frequently are they rotating their crops? What are they rotating their crops with? You all of a sudden you start going through all of the statistical equations that farmers need to consider when they're trying to get as much per acre as they possibly can. How many, with corn it was breaking the 300 bushels an acre, which happened about 10 years ago. So there's this, it's not that you're necessarily competing with your neighbors, you just want to do better on your own land. It's figuring out what is that magical formula that's going to make you number one on the list next year, or move you up on the list for next year. And so I love that, because I can just picture my grandpa sitting down and looking at the same kind of thing for corn or soybeans, and just calculating, like, what were they using for fertilizer? What seeds were, and all of those things that farmers have to take into consideration. We don't, in other jobs, don't necessarily need to think about, but farmers do. So I really love this, not just as a board report where, you're a stockholder and you want to know how much money did you just make on your stock, but sitting down and being a farmer, grower, looking at this and thinking, oh, how can I do, what's the thing I'm going to tweak for next year to make it just a little bit better than I did this year? So I love that. And since I have 3 copies, you can actually see the whole thing without me unfolding more than just one of them. Okay, there we go. Also, I can't come down here without talking about Watermelon Day. I have to admit, big fan, haven't been yet. I'm gonna come back down this year so I can go to Watermelon Day. So I brought a 1934 souvenir program, and I brought a 1946 program. So again, Watermelon Day, perfect opportunity for local businesses to advertise because people come from out of the area. I remember learning about Rocky Ford's Watermelon Day for the first time when I moved here 5 years ago, and being like, this Swink guy was a genius, right? You got all these watermelons, you're done shipping for the season. You can't, there's just so many left over. What do? You get people to get on a train in Denver, come down here and eat a free watermelon. What else are they going to be doing while they're down here? They're going to be putting money into the economy, right? They're going to be buying other things. They're going to get their free watermelon, but they're going to be buying lots of other stuff too. So it's a great opportunity, and this one actually is even, I think it's even cooler, because it got mailed to somebody. So someone wasn't able to attend, and somebody mailed them the souvenir program. And of course it's printed with this beautiful lithograph color, right? Just so pretty. You can tell that this one came right after World War II because it's very boring color-wise. So pretty. And of course on the back we see a big advertisement for Coors. Can't go without those Coors ads, right? And then all sorts of promotional ads. You've got lots of local places. Southern Colorado's favorite Francis ice cream at O'Connor's on Walnut Street. Rheumatism, all forms benefited by sulfur vapor baths at the Fancy-On shop. Like that one. We have a little portrait of Jimmy Hackenschmidt, America's most versatile clown, who clearly came to town to do his clown act for the Arkansas Valley Fair. Also, do they still do this? But they did horse racing. Do they still do horse racing?
Yes.
This one has, oh no, it's the other one. The 1945 one actually has the race form on the inside of it, the official program, and it's heavily marked by pencil. Somebody was betting on the ponies. And so I really like this one because it actually has some notes and little marks and the odds. This one is 17, oh no, maybe that was number 17B. Anyway, some of them are marked based on the races, which I really like. But there's not a lot of change between the two. They're 12 years apart. And there's a little bit different as far as production, but you see the same businesses And these, as long as you're careful with them, I'm perfectly fine with you gently flipping through them to take a look at them, because they're pretty cool. The birth of advertising really happens in the United States in the 1920s, where we go from just little tiny paragraphs of text in a newspaper to things that have pictures. So like, there's an ad in this 1934 one for Wonder Cut bread. It's slow baked, is their quote, their slogan. Slow baked, slow being spelled S-L-O. They like to drop letters on things back then. And there's a little picture of a racehorse with a jockey on it in the upper corner of it. It says it takes vitality to win a race. So they're not just advertising, but they're advertising for this specific publication, for an event that goes along with the specific publication, right? They're changing their ads, they're tweaking their ads to fit the people that, right? Like you're like, oh, I like that, that's cute. I'm here to watch the horses. Takes vitality to win a race. I'm gonna stop and buy a loaf of Wonder Cut bread on the way home. I don't personally remember Knee High as a soda, but I have watched MASH many, many times, and Radar's always drinking grape Knee High, right? Here, drink Knee High. It's non-habit forming, yet cooling and refreshing. Call for Knee High. And there was a Knee High bottling company in La Junta. Kohl, of course, advertisements for Kohl, don't forget to do that. There's little segments in both on the history of Rocky Ford. And so for people who are coming from outside of the area, it gives you an opportunity to learn more about Rocky Ford. To learn more about, we have a big full page ad on the city of Rocky Ford, advertising itself, names of the aldermen and the mayor and so forth. Ike Griffin was an onion grower. It says onions exclusively. Don't ask him for anything else. He only grows onions. Here we have a full picture ad for Walter's Pilsner beer, going up in popularity. I've never heard of Walter's, so I think maybe its popularity peaked in 46. So we have these really wonderful programs that really give a good feel for Rocky Ford, right? You come down and you're like, okay, they've got a Safeway Piggly Wiggly Mac Mart was the name of one of the grocery stores, and they sell their pineapple in tins for 29 cents. The price is not really, I mean, pineapples are still not that expensive. But yeah, so you can get your tinned peaches. Oh my goodness, how could they even do that? We should be getting fresh Colorado peaches for the Arkansas program. So anyway, I really enjoy these as well because they give you a good feeling for the event, right? And I think looking back, these are really fun too, because that's why I said, do they still do horse racing, right? Because I always think it's really cool to see kind of these old programs, because one of the things that fairs do is they give you a feeling of continuity and tradition in a way that other things don't, right? Being from Iowa, I have to be incredibly proud of the Iowa State Fair. It's one of the best state fairs, if not the best state fair. I mean, I live in Colorado now. But Iowa State Fair, I mean, they made a movie about it. Come on. But there's something about state fairs and county fairs that are unchanging, right? The particular vendors might change, but you still have that place where all the vendors are, right? The rides might change a little bit, but you still have a midway. The headliners on the concert events might change, but you still have concerts. And the horses still run, right? You're still gonna eat a watermelon at Watermelon Day. And I think there's something people go back to those events because they have that feeling of tradition and comfort, right? You have your favorite thing to do at the fair that you do every year. Does everyone have a favorite thing that they do? You don't need to tell me, but does everyone have a favorite? Like you're thinking in your head, right? Like from the fair or the rodeo or that event that you go to every year. At the Iowa State Fair, they actually have a campground. So one of my best friends in high school, her grandparents took their RV and just stayed at the campground for the whole 3 weeks of the Iowa State Fair. So we would go for a longer time, you know, and like try to squish into her grandparents' RV while making the most of the fair. So I think that there's just that tradition, right, that you build with your friends or your family. That's very endearing. So I'm very excited about coming to the fair this year. Yeah. Okay. So that's kind of our documents. So I'm going to move over to the clothing I brought. Gloves. With clothing, we do gloves because the little bit of oils that might be on our clean hands with paper, it's worth that to make sure we're not tearing. But with artifacts, we always like to handle with gloves because we don't just throw these in the laundry. So I brought 3 different things today, one of which is my mystery object. Because it's a mystery to me, not that it's a mystery to you, because it's a mystery to me. The first one I brought is a shirt from a man who lived in Rocky Ford in the 1940s. And it's the Military Order of the Cootie.
The Military Order of what?
The Cootie, C-O-O-T-I-E, you know, like cooties, like, oh, she's got cooties. Here's the cootie on the back. So the Military Order of the Cootie, I had to do a little research on this because I was like, what is this? So the Military Order of the Cootie was a offshoot of the VFW, the Veterans for Foreign Wars. So during World War I, the men had a lot of issues with head lice, during World War I. They're also in the trenches. They're wearing those like metal bucket hats, helmets. And so what they did, they called the head lice cooties. So that's where that actually comes from. Like, oh, she's got cooties. They're talking about head lice. Basically the platoon leaders would get the soldiers to stay down in the trenches by being like, watch your cooties. So if you've got head lice, you don't want the Germans to see your head lice. So it was kind of the like less traumatic way of telling 18-year-old soldiers to like, don't put your head above the trench because it will get shot off by a German soldier. So they would just say, mind your cooties. So then they would keep their heads down. They'd mind their cooties and keep their heads down below the line, the trench line. So when they came back, they created this sub-organization called the Military Order of the Cooties. And it's very much modeled after a lodge, right? So all of there's a name for the group, and then there's a name for the bigger, like they have all the leaders have different names. But all of the things were named after like lice-related things. So I'm like, no, now my brain is like blanking, but like even like the group, instead of it being called a lodge, it was called something like a scratch or something like that. Like all of the terms were related to head lice in some way. Anyway. The name, I got the name, I printed out my records so I could remember the person's name who, his name was Claude McAnally, and he lived in Rocky Ford in the 1930s. So he would have been probably in his 40s when he had this shirt. I'm not sure how much he actually wore it because we still have the stamp, the Sanford stamp on the front of the shirt. So he either would have had to tuck it in fairly high, which they kind of did in the 40s. They wear the high-waisted pants. So he either tucked it in really high or he didn't wear it very often. But lots of cooties. This is one of my favorites. I love tiny clothes. So this one is a little pair of boys' overalls. And these were owned by a little boy named Bob Fulkerson. And he was born in 1923 here in Rocky Ford. And these were his overalls around 1926. So they, you can tell just by kind of looking at them from the stitching that they were handmade for him. And most likely during that, the buttons are missing, but you can see where the buttons went. And most likely these were made for him from a pair of his father's worn out jeans or coveralls. In the 1930s, nothing goes to waste. So the inside of his suspenders looks like it was probably made from a flour sack, which were really popular for clothing in the 1930s. Women would make clothing out of flour sacks. So you get these big sacks of 25-pound sacks of flour or a feed. So like grain for your chickens or your animals. So you get these 25-pound sacks. But they all kind of look like this, just this white, plain white muslin basically. And the company started realizing that women, particularly farm women, were using these sacks for clothing. So what they started doing was they started printing them in patterns. So they would print flour sacks. You see all these beautiful flour sack fabrics that have like little yellow flowers, little yellow daisies on them, or most of them were floral patterns. So they're still the muslin, they're still just flour sack material, but they have some sort of flower pattern, most likely flowers on them. And so wife would be getting ready to make a dress for the 3-year-old. I have a dress that my great-great-grandmother made for my grandmother out of flour sacks when she was about 3. And they would say that, a 3-year-old needs 2 flour sacks. So, or feed sacks. So when dad goes to the feed store, you say, pick out 2 that match. Or, you're making one for yourself and you say, pick out 6 that match. Because you know how many flour sacks it takes for you to make what you want to make. And so dad or grandpa or Uncle Joe or whoever would go to the feed store or go to the general store and say, I need 4 of one pattern. So sometimes women got what they got, because they got the men picking them out, but you really just wanted something based on the number that you had available to you, right? If you need 6, if there's only 5 of that pattern, you ain't getting that pattern. So you knew how many you needed. So this is probably made just from a plain flour sack or feed sack. But there are some really beautiful patterns. I love them. There's a reproduction fabric place where I sometimes buy flour sack reproduction to do blouses for myself because it's always like little tiny lilacs or little tiny daisies. They're always very pretty little flower patterns. Something that might hide like the dirt that accrues while you're moving the sacks around or stacking them in a feed store, right? You can't be practical and be like just pale pink. So having the little flowers does help with things being moved in transit. So anyway, I love these little overalls. They're very cute. All right, finally we come to the mystery, my mystery, not your mystery. This is a Letterman sweater. So I looked up in the catalog, I was like, what do we have on Rocky Ford? It says Rocky Ford Letterman sweater. I'm like, cool, it's for the Melineers. It's like the coolest mascot ever. I'm sorry, I'm just saying, like I grew up with my high school was the Crusaders or something, I don't know what's boring. I grew up in Iowa, Crusaders. Anyway, Melineers, cool. So
You're the only one in the whole world that are Melineers.
It's so cool, right? It's got a big M on it, so I didn't even look. This is not the Melineers. This is something from 1935 that has a big M on it that says Colts. Who are the Colts? Is not the Melineers. And it doesn't have a big R on it. I saw the M in the catalog picture. And the M was tiny, like in the catalog picture, because the catalog picture was tiny. So I went and pulled the sweater, and I was like, This is not the Melineers. I was very upset, and I was gonna leave it at History Colorado. And I thought, no, I'm gonna bring it along, just to spite it. Because this sweater says it's from Rocky Ford. It's clearly not from Rocky Ford. So I brought it because our museum is 143 years old this year, 144. We've been bringing stuff in for a long time. Now, we do know that this is from the late 40s, early 50s. We've got the donor record, so we know who donated it. They were from Rocky Ford. They donated it in the 70s. Probably trying to save their, have that nostalgia of high school feeling. They're getting ready for their 20th high school or 25th high school reunion. Try to put the sweater on, it doesn't fit, they're mad. They're like, I'm gonna donate it to the museum. But I have no idea where this came from. They said Rocky Ford. So now I have a mystery, which happens a lot in the museum.
Maybe Manzanola.
That's what I wondered. But it's the Colts.
I don't know, what are Manzans?
So now I have to do some research. I have to go back through city directories. I have to start looking up other towns in the area that begin with M to be like, is it that town? Is it Manzanola? I was thinking about that on the way down. I was like, maybe it is. But the Colts, did they have their own high school? How do we solve mysteries in the museum? I thought this would be a great way to talk about this. Come down, take these off, they're making my hands sweaty. How do we solve mysteries in museums? We get to do fun research. Fun for some of us. Not everyone has fun doing it, but I really enjoy a good deep dive. So,
You're assuming it's a high school, right?
it is designed like a high school sweater. It could be college, maybe, but like the School of Mines, they're not the Colts.
Yeah, there's something else. I don't know, what's Manzanola?
Blue.
Bobcats.
Yeah,
Bobcats.
Bobcats. So now I have to figure this out. I have to figure out the mystery. See, it would have been better if someone would have just been like, oh, I know exactly what that is. So thank you everyone for not having that knowledge in your head. But thank you for some good leads. I like those already. So then we have to figure out, okay, clearly that's not the right information. I want to make sure the right information gets attached to this sweater so that if someone comes to look at it 10 years from now, they're not coming expecting to see the Melineers and they get the Colts. So I'm going to look through city directories. I'm going to look through old newspapers online, through the Colorado Historic Newspaper Collection. It's the largest collection of local Colorado newspapers in the world, which makes sense because it's Colorado. It's all free of charge. You can look through any newspaper you want to. So now I have to figure out who the Colts are. If I figure it out, I'll let you know so you can share it with people. So I'm going to look through old newspapers. I'm going to look through city directories. I'm going to look through other things. I'm going to do some Googling. Never the place to end, always a good place to start. But I'm going to figure this out because now I have been challenged by this sweater to reveal information that I do not currently have in my head. So at some point I will figure out what the M Colts, 35 makes sense. It's either the year or it was the player's number, right? It's a Letterman sweater. So may have been a player number 35 rather than the year. So I've got two options there. But I am going to start in the 30s. Well, no, I'm going to start in the 50s. Oh. See, now even just talking to you, I'm like, if it's 35, if it's a number, or if it's 35, if it's the player's number, not the year, we know that this is from the late 1940s, early 50s. So it's not the year. It's got to be the player number. One number eliminated already. So just keep kind of going until we get that figured out. But it's fun. It's a really fun part of history. You don't even have to do it as a job to have fun with it. I was that dorky little kid who went to the library when I was 12 and went on the microfilm to see what the newspaper was talking about on the day I was born. So I was the weird kid who in middle school knew all the movies that came out in 1976 because I read the newspaper. So history is always fun to explore. You have a really cool museum here, and there's lots and lots of fun things. Actually, something I noticed, I'm going to move the camera on you again. I was standing here and I noticed this little purse right here. And I took a picture of it because I'm pretty sure I know who designed that purse. I just brought in a collection into History Colorado a couple of weeks ago from the grandson of a man named Lester Griswold. Lester Griswold was a Colorado artisan who worked out of Colorado Springs. And he actually was an engineer who was fascinated at preserving traditional handicrafts in the early 20th century. So what he did as an engineer, everyone knows an engineer, right? You know how meticulous engineers are, right? They're really data oriented. And so he went out and he learned about leatherworking, and he learned about metalworking, and he learned about woodworking, and like documented all of this and made a little book called Handicrafts. And I have a purse that is almost identical to that one. Almost identical. It's the exact same shape, it's the same clasp, it's the same lily design. Well, the lily design on the front's slightly different, but I have one that's almost identical to that Lester made. And for the most part, he didn't make and then sell crafts. His interest was making the book and selling patterns so that other people could make the crafts. So he may not have made it, but someone may have made that based on his book and the patterns that were available in it. So I think there's always something fun to discover. Just be like, I don't know what that is, but I want to know what it is. And once you know what it is, you want to know more about what it is. And that's the cool thing about history, is that like, there's always a way to look at something different, right? If I was a textile historian, which I'm not, I might be more interested in the fabric that this is made out of. We kind of did more of a textile analysis here, right, when we talked about the flour sacks. And I might be more interested in the embroidery work, and whether the embroidery work was done by hand or whether it was whether it was machine stitched. It was probably done by hand based on the time period. But I'm a social historian, so I'm more interested in like, when he put the shirt on, what did he go do? What did the Military Order of the Cooties do that was maybe different from, say, being a Mason, right? And maybe he was a Mason, but maybe he also was in the Military Order of the Cooties. Like, what was different about the Cooties that made him want to do that in addition to the other things he did, right? There's always these, I feel like history is always full of questions, and even if you answer them, you still get to answer other questions about things that you hadn't thought about yet. So that is where I'm going to leave my talk about the things that I brought. And I would love to answer questions that you have or invite you to come up and take a look at these things. Like I said, feel free to gently page through the exposition guides. Please don't touch the sugar beets, they're delicate. Feel free to flip through this. And if you want to see the back of the cooties again, I can flip it over for you with gloves on. So that's where I'll end it, and I'll ask questions or invite you to come. Anyone have a question, or?
How did you obtain, you said they came from Rocky Ford, but how do you know that?
So, that's a great question. I love that. How do we know where these came from? So I printed out the catalog records for everything I brought today, and because we keep donor records. So when somebody donates something to us, we get their name and their address, or these days their name and their email address, so that we can contact them again for the legal paperwork. But then we have it on record that they donated something. So then if they donate something again, then we can be like, oh, thank you, right? But we already have their info on file. So donors really are a big part of the story. So like with Lester Griswold, the one who does the probably is connected to that little purse back there, it was his grandson who donated the items to the museum. And I visited them a couple of times to talk to them about the donation, and then eventually to pick up the donation. And during that time, Ray told me a lot about his memories of his grandfather and his memories, and their home is still full of furniture that was made by his grandfather. Like a lot of the things that they donated are things that they've lived with. He and his wife have lived with for 50 years. One of the lamps that they donated a lamp. They've been using that lamp for 50 years. And he was using, that came from his parents and from his grandfather. And they finally decided to part with it. So they went and so I said, I would love to bring that in. But that lamp has been in continual use for over 100 years. So the donors for us are really a big part of the story because they're the ones that take this from just being textile analysis to Bob Fulkerson. Right? We know that these were Bob Fulkersons. And we can look Bob up in the census. And we can learn more about him that way. And we can look up his parents in city directories and learn more about them that way. And so donors really help us make it be something that's just something to look at into something that tells us a story. Because the stories are what we really love, right? As people fascinated by history, we love those stories. And so we keep all of our donor information, and a lot of times they give us a lot of information. I have a whole paragraph on this gentleman here because the person who donated it was Claude's housekeeper. And so she gave us a whole bunch of information about him when she donated it because he passed away and he didn't leave descendants. And so they were going to take it to a secondhand store, and she thought that actually has some Colorado history to it. And so she came and offered it to us. She told his story, so we know who he is and where he came from and where he went to school and so forth, so that we know about him. So donors are really key to our donations. Yeah. Any other questions?
What is your most unusual thing in the museum?
It's something that's very unexpected, I think. So, Philip Sheridan was a Civil War general. He helped build Denver. There's a street named after him in Denver. And when the museum first started, the Sheridan family was one of the families that kind of helped fund it. Like it was created by the legislature, but then they needed donations to get it started. And what they did, because there were still a lot of fairly old at that point Civil War soldiers around, is they did a war relics collection. That's what they called it. And Sheridan donated something that was very important to him. It was given to him by his brother. His brother had been stationed, was with Grant, General Grant, during the war. So he was in Virginia. And so his brother was at Appomattox Courthouse when Grant and Lee signed the paperwork to end the Civil War. Well, I suppose his brother was probably fairly low ranking because he probably got left to clean up the room. This is the story I've created in my head. This is probably not true, not factual. Rachel's theory. But this is how I picture it in my head. His brother's left to clean up the room. He's like, oh, the big cool thing is done. They've signed it. The war has ended. And he's cleaning up the room. So he's cleaning up the room, knocks over a candle, accidentally burns some stuff on the table. And he's like, oops, pick the candle back up. And he's like, oh, picks this up off the table. He's like, sticks it in his pocket, sends it to his brother in Denver. It's the inkwell that Grant and Lee used to dip their pens in to sign the end of the Civil War. So we have the inkwell. We know it is the inkwell. There's a couple of things. First of all, provenance is very important in historic artifacts that are of emotional importance to people like this, because this is not just emotionally important to one person, it's like a national story, right? So we want provenance. Where did this, do we know exactly who this came from? How do we prove that that's the inkwell? Well, first of all, Sheridan's brother gave it to him, and Sheridan donated it to the museum. So there's a very short line of this person had it to this person. We also know it's that inkwell because it's burnt on the side. There's a fairly distinctive distortion on the side of the inkwell. In fact, we had to make a special little box for it that has a little dent on one side because there's a distortion from where it got too close to a candle. So we know that it's that inkwell because it was incredibly well documented from Sheridan's brother to Sheridan. And then it was really well documented when Sheridan donated it to the museum. So we know that it's that inkwell. But I think it's one of the weirdest things we have because it makes no sense why it would be in Colorado, right? Other than the fact that we had a lot of Civil War veterans here that helped settle Denver. So, and then the state. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
We also have mountain men dentures, which is also just weird, but mountain men had to have dentures too, so.
Where is the museum exactly in Denver?
We are at 1200 Broadway, so we are 2 blocks south of the Capitol.
Okay,
Yeah, the Capitol is on Lincoln, and our building is between Broadway and Lincoln, 2 blocks south of the Capitol. Yep. Okay.
that must be fun to work there.
It is. I love my job. All right, well, please feel free to come up and take a look. Like I said, I can flip the cooties over if you want me to. Otherwise, you can gently page through those, and I've got the beats laid out. Rob has a copy of this book, an original. It's pretty cool.
Thank you, Rachel.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.